Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am CS Rajesh Tarpara, Council Member of ICSI, welcoming all of you on this live webinar by MCA, LTI, and supported by ICSI. First of all, let me introduce with theme and the initiative of the government as well as ICSI. At the outset, ICSI is an extended arm of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which is dedicated to efforts and strengthen the governance frameworks of the government, that is also in the line with the ease of doing business. During the financial year 21-22, Ministry of Corporate Affairs has launched MCA-21 version 3 and popularly known as MCA V3 portal to enhance the user experience and using advanced technology and simplifying the compliance processes as well as a backend system. As a part of ongoing initiative and efforts of MCA to simplify the procedural aspects and transitions of various forms from V2 to V3, the ministry is always taking initiative to arrange this kind of the interactive seminar with the stakeholders. This live webinar is organized to address the login and registration related issues on V3 portal. This session aims for registration to assist the stakeholders in understanding and resolving the technical challenges faced by them and to ensure the smooth functioning of the experience. We are pleased to introduce our officers, Sasid, Deputy Directors from MCA, under whose able guidance the leadership, the issue relating to MCA V324 are getting continuously resolved. Sir, we are inviting you on this webinar for few words.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the first series of open house when this has been under the initiative of the secretary. Secretary wanted that we need to get all the issues of the stakeholders and resolved as early as possible. So maybe we are finding that some of the issues which have been raised by tickets are not being resolved on time. That is an issue that we have been addressing. So in fact, we have taken the help of ICSI and we are constantly monitoring how the tickets needs to be resolved on time. And by resolution, I mean the stakeholders also should have the final resolution. And from the stakeholders should be satisfied from there. So this open house has been one of that kind, wherein we have one interaction with the stakeholders, try to understand their issues. And for this, the topic today would be based on login and registration issues in V3. So with that, I request Richard to take over and carry on, because I have another meeting to attend with. I need to go and meet the secretary, so I'll be just leaving in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sidil Sasi sir. I now introduce the LTI team. We have from LTI, Richa Gupta ma'am, Sital Randev madam, Chandra Singh, Balram Thakur, Vijaya, Seema Malhotra, and Chandraya Datta. I welcome you everyone on this live webinar on registration and related issues. Everybody might be having some certain problems, and through this program, I think we are able to solve their problem, and we can assure them that there will be now smooth functioning. Just take a liberty, Richa madam. Can we take some other issues which may not be related to registration during this session?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So first of all, as sir mentioned, our initially we'll focus on login and registration, because as we all understand, that MCA has done a lot of process re-engineering when it comes to login and registration module. They, as compared to how user used to create their user IDs in V2 vis-a-vis how the process is now in V3. There are a couple of changes. So we would first like to go ahead with the walkthrough of our login and registration module. Though it has been live since last 2 years, but we would again take this opportunity to give you a quick walkthrough, address to user issues, and then afterwards we can take up other issues as well, sir.
Okay, madam. Just one request, because we have already using this. We are as a professionals, we are familiar with certain things like how to log in, how to roll checks, but certain technical problems are still unsolved, right? So focus should be on that. And because how to log in, how to, it is after 3 years of the passing of an implementation of this project, talking on the registration and how to create a user ID is something like not matching with the timeline, right? But even though we are focusing on the registration, but other issues can be taken up if permissible. And now
Yes, sir.
floor is open for you, madam, please.
Okay. All right. So I have my colleague Vijaya, so who will be demonstrating the presentation today. Vijaya, over to you.
Richa, is my screen visible? Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes, Vijaya.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So today's topic, we are going to discuss about user registration and login module, and which includes how to update your profile and how to reset your password and all. So we will talk about major, key points that we need to consider whenever you're trying to register or upgrade, or whenever you want to add a role. So we will talk about what are all different kinds of roles, what are all the major differences between V2, V3. So after that, we will also demonstrate few key FAQs, and then what are all the common issues that users are raising, and what is the proposed solution, or what is the solution that we have been given. And then we will open for question and answers. So let us begin with the today's agenda. So we will talk about user registration key highlights, which are there in V3 system, and then what all types of users are there, and then key differences which are there from V2 to V3. And what are all the new registration? So basically, there's whenever we go for a registration, we all, every stakeholder will get confused whether we have to go for a new registration or I have to go for a profile upgrade. So what are all the scenarios? What are all the key points that we need to consider before going for a new registration or before going for upgrade? And what are all the different registration flows that are available? So here we will talk about what are all the key points that we need to take care before going for any fresh registration. And then we will talk about how to do a profile update page, what are all options that are available. And then we will talk about little bit on associate DSC functionality. And then we will run through few commonly asked FAQs basically. So that will answer most of our questions. And we have added few do's and don'ts. So what are all the key points that we need to consider in terms of user registration module, or few things which we should not do it. Even though there is as such, there is no mandatory restrictions, that also we will talk about. And then we will also demonstrate few common issues and resolutions. These are basically based on the tickets that we are getting from stakeholders, and then followed by question and answers. So this is the slide, so which actually highlights what are all the key points that are there in V3 user registration module. So if I talk about the registration process, as many of you know, now we have from V2 to V3, it is a major change in terms of user ID, the meaning of user ID. So for user ID in V3 system is nothing but your email ID with which you go and register for the first time in the system in V3. It is applicable for all the users except for company or LLP user. For company or LLP user, your user ID is nothing but your SIN or LLPIN or FCRN. So this is one of the change key highlight that we want to highlight. And then we have redefined the user types and roles and groups. As such, you may not find the major differences in terms of the roles or categories from V2 to V3, but the way these roles functions, there is a change. Suppose, for example, there was a company user concept in V2 also. There is a role called company user, but as such, we were not taking the SIN number or this association checks, all these mandatory OTP verifications, all these were not happening. Even the roles were same, but the way we have defined the roles or the access controls in V3 is little different than V2. And then streamlined authorization and suspension process, so which is again a new to V3 system. So if you want to, so basically, as we all know, now in V3 system, all the filings needs to happen through business user ID login based. So so if I'm not associated with my company, except for professional or professional staff member, I may not be able to file any forms. So if I want to authorize any of my manager or any of my subordinates or any of the employees of the company, so the company can go and give a authorization. Company or the director of a company can go for a authorization process flow, wherein you will go and give a authorization through a OTP based authentication, after which the concerned person who has given that authorization, so he can go ahead and file the forms. This is also one of the major enhancement that we have done in V3 system. And then the key highlight is basically the OTP verification, which was not there in V2 system. So this OTP verification will happen initially at the time of at the time of new user ID registration. So mostly it will be a two OTP verification, that is email ID and mobile number verification. But there are some exceptions that we will talk about in subsequent slides. And then additional security checks. So whenever you log in, so once you register yourself as a user in V3 system, be it as a registered user or business user, and if you try to log in from a different device, so we will authenticate you through a OTP. So that is also a new functionality in V3 system. And in terms of user ID, password recovery, or the we have a streamlined, or we have actually made a user-friendly process, simple process flow steps, which we have deployed recently. So we will be showing that flow also, how to retrieve your password and how to retrieve your user ID. These are all the key highlights that we are going to talk about in this presentation. So let us begin with the types of users that are there in V3 system. So as I mentioned, these user IDs you must have seen in V2 also. I will just talk about the key changes or what are all the access based controls that we have added apart from V2, whatever we have. So registered user, as the name suggests, it is a registered user, need not connect with your company or your LLP. So he's so basically this person in V3 system, in terms of V3 system, this person will have only the access to the basic services like VPD, JCC, or ebook services or MDS services. So basically, the common services that are available for general public, so he can go and access. So, and in terms of the registered user, there's a big shift from V2 to V3, wherein what we are trying to say is, in V2, most of the forms can be filed by registered user. So, but in terms of V3, registered user may not be able to file all the forms, only certain forms like Run LLP or Spice Plus, Part A, Part B, or Philip or complaint form. So wherever there is the company is yet to be incorporated, or the form can be filed by a normal public. So those type of forms can only be filed by a registered user. So now for registered user flow, we will talk about the key fields that we need to consider while creating a registered user in V3. So we will show you that screen as well. And the next type of role is company or LLP user. So as the name suggests, so this is the user role which gets created for a specific company or LLP, which means this company will be able to file, or LLP will be able to file only the forms that are relevant for that company. So if I register with the company A as my user, I will not be able to file company B forms. I will be able to access all the forms that are filed by using this company, or all the forms which are filed by my authorized representative or my directors, so or any of the professional. So basically, it is a company user is basically, if I have to put it in a simple words, this will give you the entire picture of your company, whether the forms which are filed by using my user ID or forms which are filed by other users which are linked to my company. Okay, so this is what, so as the name, so here, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the company or LLP user ID will be nothing but your SIN or LLP number, which you get it as part of your incorporation process, followed by any SIN change process flow. Okay, so the next type of user is director or designated partner. So any individual who is appointed as a director in a company or designated partner of LLP can go ahead and create their business user as a director or designated partner. So as the name suggests, so for creating this user ID, you need to, the prerequisite is that you need to have a DIN number, director identification number, which is a mandatory field while creating your registration. So in terms of the filing process, so if you are a director in say 10 companies, so you will be able to, if you are logged with that director or designated partner role, you will be able to access, or you will be able to file the forms only in the companies in which, or LLPs in which you are currently associated with. Suppose I just got my DIN number maybe 15 years back, but I'm currently not associated with any company. So then I will not be able to file any of the forms, even though you will be able to log in with your role, but you will not be able to file any of the forms. Okay, so the next is professional user, which is most common user ID that we through which your most of the filings happens in MC system. So this professional user comprises of three major professional users, the company secretaries, chartered accountants, cost accountants, who are basically in practice. So here, as the name suggests, since we are talking about chartered accountant, company secretaries, and cost accountants, for creating your user ID as a professional user, there are two mandatory prerequisites. That is, one is you need to have a valid membership number with any of these three institutes, and you need to have a valid PAN number, within which you can go ahead and create your registration. And in terms of the filings that you can do, so professional, as the name suggests, and he is a professional, is an outsider of a company, and basically he's in a full-time practice. So there is no restriction on the filing part for which all companies are LLPs. The professional user is one user who can file for any of the company or any of the LLP, irrespective of the reason whether. So obviously this professional will not be associated with your company, apparently, right? So it means you can by using professional user login, we can go ahead and file the form for any company or LLP. This is for professional user. A manager, secretary, authorized representative role. Here, only the difference here is basically for creating manager, secretary, or authorized representative role. There may be three scenarios. The scenario number one is basically you have filed a DIR 12 through which you got appointed with any of the KMP roles like manager, secretary, CEO, CFO. In that case, you can go and create your registration by using this service, because in those cases, DIN is not a mandatory field form. So within which means I will not be able to create my user ID with director or designated partner role. So hence, but whenever you are going to get appointed as a KMP in DIR 12 form through which you get appointed, the PAN is a mandatory field. It is a prerequisite. You cannot become a KMP, that is CEO, CFO, manager, or secretary, without a PAN number. So which means for creating your manager, secretary, authorized representative role, you need to have a mandatorily you need to have a PAN number, valid PAN number, basis which you can go ahead and create your registration. And the second scenario is the company secretary who is in full-time employment. So as we talk about professional user, this professional user category is created to handle professionals who are in full-time practice. But if a company secretary who is a member of ICSI, who is in a full-time employment and wants to create his user ID, so they have to come and register with manager, secretary, or authorized representative role. And while creating a registration, you can also provide your SIN number or LLP number through which you are associated, for which you want to file a form, or to the company to which you are actually associated with. And the third scenario wherein we may have to create a user ID with manager, secretary, authorized representative role is at the time of incorporation of a company. And suppose, for example, I'm trying to file an incorporation form, and whoever is the proposed directors, those directors are not having any DIN. So which means they're applying for DIN through incorporation form. But as part of the Spice Plus Part B or your Agile Pro form, whatever the link forms that will come up depending on your selection of your class, category, subcategory, etc. So then someone has to sign the form, right? One of the proposed director has to sign a form. If the proposed director is not having a DIN number, then we are taking the PAN of that person who can sign this Spice Plus Part B form. In that case, there may be a deadlock situation for the users. Basically, he's not a proposed director. He is not having a DIN number. So how I go and, because if in V3 system, so if you want to affix your DSC, you have to register as a business user. Only then associate DSC would happen. Which means for me to sign a form with the proposed director role, basis the PAN number, I need to go and register myself as a business user. So I will not be able to register as a director or designated partner because I am yet to get my DIN number. So only the option that is available at this point in time is to create the role with manager, secretary, and authorized representative role, wherein it only asks you to provide your PAN number. And once the incorporation happens and once the proposed director gets his DIN number, then they can go for upgrading their role to director or designated partner. These are all the common scenarios through which we use this manager, secretary, authorized representative role. So next, there are three more roles. Officer in default, this is also one of the role that we have added. So initially this role may get created through your GNL3 form, or you can authorize any by using that authorization access process that we have seen in the previous slide. So company or any of the signatory can authorize a person as an officer in default, so that they can also go ahead and file forms for the particular company. So this is one of the role that we have in V3 system. And then the nodal officer or a deputy nodal officer, which is basically, this role is used for verification of claims and coordination with the IPF authorities, etc. So as we all know, for creating any nodal officer or deputy nodal officer, PAN is a prerequisite. And also, so you have to go on for IPF2, through which you have to authenticate that this person is going to, this person is my nodal officer of the company or deputy nodal officer of the company. So which means for creating any business user ID with the role of nodal officer or deputy nodal officer, you need to have a PAN number and then followed by a IPF2 filing, without which we will not be able to register the person as a nodal officer or deputy nodal officer. So the last role, a professional staff member. So this role was initially not there when we launched V3 system, but basis the inputs that we received from all three institutes, we have added this role as a professional staff member role, which is basically the role which is created to handle the number of filings as we have moved all web-based filings in V3 system. So if there is one practicing professional who has a 5-6 member staff, so we have enabled the user ID creation for the professional staff members also. However, whenever you are creating a role as a professional staff member, it is the prerequisite is to give the professional member card details along with your institute associate fellow and membership number, within which we will do a verification OTP authentication. Only then we will be creating the professional staff member, which means indirectly. So each form filed by this professional staff member will be linked to a professional member who is a member of any of these three institutes. So these are all the different types of users that we have currently in V3 system. And then let us talk about the key differences in user registration module when we compare V2 with V3. So we have only picked up the critical, the major changes. So the first change, if you can see, forms in V2 could be filed by any user category, and associate DSC functionality was available without any login to the system. So which means if I have, so this is one of the key reason why we have most of the users, if I would talk about the percentage, maybe 80 to 90% of the users in V2 system are registered users only, because if I have a registered user ID, I can go ahead and file the form for any company. So this is one of the point wherein the key enhancement has happened in V3 system, and also the associate DSC part. So associate DSC and user registration are not linked process in V2 system, which means you, irrespective of the reason whether you have a registered user or business user in V2, you can directly go ahead and associate your DSC. These two are not linked at all. So, but if you see V3 system, so majority of the forms can be filed and transacted only by the business users. So this is one of the major change. You will not be able to file the forms in V3 system with just a registered user login, except few forms that we've talked about. That is maybe incorporation forms or forms which can be filed by general public, like complaint form, etc. But otherwise, all the forms have to be filed by a business user. Business user, I mean any of the director or director role or company user role, whatever the roles that we have talked about in the previous slides, only those users will be able to file the forms in V3 system. Also, DSC association is a post-login functionality wherein business user can only associate their DSC. So if you want to associate your DSC in V3 system, the prerequisite for the user is to create a business user, without which you will not be able to associate the DSC in V3 system, which means both are linked. Registration and DSC association is a linked process. So you have to first go and register yourself as a business user and then go for a DSC association. And then one of the change that is, we have already discussed about this, the OTP functionality. So we have OTP functionality initially at the time of registration also, and after registration also, whenever you try to log in with a different system. So we will be authenticating the user through email or mobile OTP, which is a new functionality in V3 system. Okay, so then one more enhancement in terms of the way users used to log in V2 and V3 for especially the business users. So as we said, as such, there is no role. Roles are almost same in V2 and V3. In terms of the naming convention, so naming terminology is similar to V2, right? Whatever the roles that we have seen. But however, whenever you're creating any user, or whenever if you've already created your user as a business user in V2 system, all those user registration or login, post-login services are based on DSC. These are DSC-based logins. As such, there is no functionality of password if you want to log in with any of the business user in V2 system. So you have to provide your DSC for logging in as a business user, which means password-based login is available right now in V2 only for the registered users. But however, in V3 systems, all the users, including all the business users, it is basically a password-based login only for both registered and business users. There is no separate functionality called DSC-based login for business users. These are all the few key differences that we want to highlight in terms of V2 and V3. So now one of the major question, whether I should go for a new registration or I should go for a profile update if I have an existing V2 user ID. What should I do? So what is the meaning of new registration or new user is basically this user is never present in V2 and wants to register. I've not connected, I've not filed any forms, I've not logged in with any of my previous user IDs. I came to the system for the first time and I want to register myself as a registered user in V3 system or as a business user with any of the defined roles that I have as a business user, like director or professional user or company or any other role. In that case, you can directly go for new registration in V3. You will not get any error or any validation issues. So if you are never done any of the filings or never logged in with any of your previous user IDs, so directly you can go for new registration form, be it as a registered user or business user with whatever the role that you want to create. So the next comes up, what if I have one existing user ID in V2 system? Can I create a new user ID or I should go and update my profile? Or what if I have one user ID in V3, which is a registered user, and now I want to move it to business user? What all options that I have? So basically here there are three key points that we want to highlight. One is existing registered user in V2 wants to stay as such in V3 system. Suppose I have a V2 user ID, which is a registered user, and I want to shift my user ID. So I want to move to V3 because obviously I have to go and file form or access some services. So I want to move myself to V3 as a registered user only. You can do that. And then existing registered user in V2 wants to upgrade to business user in V3 under any of the roles that are there there for a business user, which means I have one registered user ID in V2 system. I want to upgrade myself to business user in V3. Why I want to go and upgrade myself as a business user in V3 is basically, so without which I will not be able to file any of most of the forms, basically, right? Apart from incorporation and the forms that we've discussed. So which means it is indirectly, we are mandating all the existing V2 registered users to get themselves updated to upgraded to a business user, because without which they will not be able to do any form filing or transactions in V3 system. And the third scenario is existing business user in V2 wants to continue as business user in V3. I already have one business user ID in V2 system. Now I want to continue as a business user in V3. In all these three scenarios, you are not required to do a new registration in V3 system. Instead, you have to go and update your profile, or you have to upgrade your role to whatever the role that you want to do in V3 system. So in all these scenarios, no new registration is required. You have to go and update your profile in V3 system. So if you go and register by giving a different email ID or different PAN number or whatever the details, then you may be able to register, but you will face a lot of issues in terms of the moving your forms which were there in V2 to V3. So that we will talk about. But what we are trying to say here is, in all these three scenarios, won't go for new registration in V3. Instead, you go for profile update. Okay, so now we will quickly run through the registration flow process for key users. So we will not go in detail because you must have already seen these screens and you must have already created your user IDs. But we will quickly run through the major screens and the key points that you need to take care before creating any of the role. So this is the page wherein whenever you want to create a new registration, you have to click on sign in option and then click on login for V2 or register. If you already have a user ID, you can click on directly login for V2 or V3. So login for V3 will take you to the V2 page. And if you want to register as a new user, you have to click on register. If you already have a login ID, you can directly give your user ID and password and click on login for V3 filing. And now this is a screen for creating your registered user ID. So as we mentioned, we have two major user categories, that is registered user and business user. So whenever you are selecting user category as a registered user, this is how your screen looks. So obviously for registered user, you will not be having any roles. That is why individual will get pre-filled automatically. We will not be having any sub roles. It is only one role that we have, that is called individual role. And then this is one of the change that we want to highlight. Initially, when we launched income tax PAN was not mandatory for registered users because of that reason. Many of the users were they have created their user IDs without PAN, and then later on when they want to convert, they were facing a lot of issues and challenges. So right now, if you want to create your registered user ID in V3 system, you have to mandatorily provide your income tax PAN. So and also in V3 system, it is one PAN and one email ID. So you cannot create multiple user IDs with the same PAN number or the same email ID. And then next screen is, this screen is common for all the users apart from company or LLP user, wherein user is required to provide your the first name, middle name, last name, and date of birth, gender, etc. So please note that whenever you are providing a PAN number, whatever the details that you're providing here, so all these details have to be matched with your PAN database. So which means whatever the format that you have given while applying your, while getting your PAN allotted, the same details in the same format, you have to provide the details. Only then PAN verification would get passed. Suppose, for example, if you give last name as the first name and first name as last name, when compared with the PAN database, you may get an error. So please make sure to provide the details of first name, middle name, last name as per your PAN database, wherever you are providing your PAN number. And then all these address details. So you have to provide your address details. Basis the PIN code, few details would get pre-filled like state, city, area, locality. It is again common across almost all the user IDs. And then you have to provide the email ID, which is unique email ID, as we talked about. So in V3, it is one email ID, a PAN-based user ID creation, right? So then once you give your address details, you have to provide your password and hint questions, hint answers, all this information will be provided. And then there comes the OTP verification for both email ID and mobile number. You have to provide both the email IDs, both the OTPs which you have received on your mobile and email ID. And once the OTPs are authenticated, then you will be getting a successful message that you are successfully registered on MCA portal as a registered user, and confirmation will be sent to so-and-so email ID. And to log in, this is very important. To log in, please provide username as so-and-so. So it is not like V2 wherein you will define your own user ID. Whatever the email ID that you're going to provide here, that becomes your username for all your subsequent logins. Okay, this is for the user registration flow. Sorry. So let us talk about director or designated partner registration flow. What are the key points that I need to consider? So here you have to obviously select the business user as your category and then followed by role as director or designated partner. So here, if you can see income tax PAN and DPIN or DIN number. So however, for creating your director or designated partner role, income tax PAN is not mandatory. If you want to give your DIN is associated with the PAN number, you can provide your PAN number, but it is not mandatory. This is because director, I can go ahead and obtain my DIN number with passport also, especially for foreign directors. So that is why income tax PAN is not mandatory for creating your role as a director or designated partner role. However, you have to provide your DIN number mandatorily. Without DIN number, you will not be able to create your director or designated partner role. And here, one more critical point or important point that we want to highlight here is in the next screen, whatever the details that you're providing, even though the fields are similar to whatever we have seen in the registered user screen, but the details that you're going to provide here should exactly match with your DIN database, not with the PAN. Because while obtaining your DIN number or as part of your KYC compliance, which happens in every year on a yearly basis, right? So we might have already validated your details with the PAN database. That is the reason why. So now, if you're creating your director role, we will not go and validate with the PAN database. Instead, we will check if the details that you're provided are in line with the DIN master or the DIN database that we have in the MCA system. So please make sure to provide the details as per the DIN master in case of director or designated partner role. So we will talk about why will there be any difference in terms of PAN database that we will talk about in the subsequent slides. But please make sure to provide your details, especially your first name, middle name, last name, and date of birth as per your DIN database. Then the OTP verification, this functionality would remain same. Only the change that we have here is, even though 2 OTPs are required for all director roles, initially we have implemented like this only, but later on for foreign directors, especially for foreign directors, what we have done is instead of 2 OTPs, we will be sending the same OTP to both email and mobile number. So you can give only 1 OTP if your nationality, whatever the nationality that you are going to give is a foreign nationality. So for foreign directors, basically, so it is not mandated that you have to mandatorily provide 2 OTPs. Instead, you can provide only 1 OTP. Also, as we mentioned, the moment you go and register yourself as a director or designated partner, whatever the email ID that you have provided here, that will become your user ID for login purposes for all future logins. And the same will be communicated through email or SMS, email and SMS. So the next user category is basically a professional user. So as we've talked about, the PAN is a prerequisite and also the membership number details, which are required to be given. So I will quickly show you. So this is the professional user screen. You have to provide the professional, the institute name, whether it is ICSI or ICA or CMA. So the institute name and income tax PAN and the professional membership number. So here, please note that the details, whatever the details that you're going to enter, like first name, middle name, last name, and date of birth, these details will be validated with your PAN database. It will not be validated with your membership data that we get it from the institutes. It is basically 2 types of verification that happens. One is the details that you're providing in the system will be validated with your PAN database. And then the membership number that you're going to enter will be validated against your institute and membership number. So we get a institute membership number details in our system. We maintain that the information in our system, we will validate whether this membership number is actually associated with this institute or not. So basically 2 types of validation happens here. So one with the PAN database and other with the respective institute validation. So the professional staff member screen is here also it is similar to whatever the screen that we have seen, but only the difference here is apart from giving the person details like his name, personal details, address, everything, you have to provide the professional member under which you want to get registered yourself as a professional staff member. So if you can see the screen, membership type and institute name and professional membership number. So this is basically for tagging purpose. A professional staff member files 100 forms. So this professional staff member belongs to which professional member is what we want to identify. So that is all, without which we will not be able to create the user ID. And here in terms of the OTP authentication, here also we have 2-step verification. One for the person who is getting registered himself or herself as a professional staff member, that is email ID OTP verification and mobile OTP verification for that person. And also whatever the membership number that we are giving here. So this person ka details also we are taking here, right? The professional ka email ID and mobile numbers. we will be triggering OTPs to the professional member also. So that person also has to authenticate. Yes, this person wants to, so I agree to get this person registered as a professional staff member under my professional membership number. So which means basically the 4 OTP verification happens. One for staff member ka email ID OTP verification, staff member ka mobile number OTP verification, and for professional email and mobile number verification. Only then this user ID will get registered as a professional staff member. And again, this professional staff member also will be able to file the forms for any of the company or LLP, like professional user. Then this is the company user screen, company or LLP user screen. So here, the key points that we need to highlight here is, it is mandatory for you to provide the SIN number, and we will validate your SIN number in the system. That should be a valid SIN number which is there in the system, and the name will get auto pre-populated based on your SIN number, and few details you have to mandatorily enter. And the authentication happens. Suppose if you enter a date of incorporation, we will go and validate if the date of incorporation is matching with our MCA system. So all these validations would happen. And here also the process is a little different than any other user registration. So here also, whenever you want to create a company user or LLP user, any of the existing director or designated partner has to give the authorization, authentication. So there will be again verification, OTP verification happens at 2 levels. One for that particular company user or LLP user for which you have provided your mobile number and email ID. And also you have to, so suppose if the company, I want to create a business company user login for say company A, in which I have 5 directors who are currently associated with that company. So in this field, director of details of the directors to be used for OTP. So I will have an option to choose any one of the director. Whoever is available, I can choose that person ka name, and system automatically picks the details of that director from the DIN master, and it will trigger OTPs to this person. And only after entering the OTP of the director, whoever the person to which we want to authenticate, so that OTP has to be provided, only then you will be able to create the user company user registration. But here only the difference is, in case of professional staff member, there will be 4 OTPs, but here it will be only 3 OTPs. For director, either you can provide your mobile OTP or email OTP. Both are not required. Okay, so this is the screen for nodal officer. It is almost similar to your manager, secretary, authorized representative role. PAN is a mandatory field. Only the point that we need to take care or make sure before creating the user role as nodal officer or deputy nodal officer is to go and file IPF2 form, wherein you have to provide the same details. We will validate with the IPF2 filing information. So apart from PAN validation, we also go and check whether the details are actually matching with your IPF2 filing. Apart from that, the process is same like any other user registration process flow that we have seen. So with this, we have completed the registration flow screens. What are all the key points that we need to consider before creating the user registration for any of the user category and role? Now we'll quickly move on to the profile update page. So once I create my user ID in V3 system or upgrade myself to myself as a user, a business user or registered user in V3 system, so I can go and update my profile. So for that, you have to log in first by using your current credentials, user ID and password. That is, in case of company or LLP user, you have to log in with your latest SIN number or LLP number, followed by a password. Or if it is for any other user, you have to provide your email ID, which you have given at the time of your registration, followed by password. Then you will be able to see the screen. And then if you click on this hello, the user name, so you will be able to see profile update icon here. So you have to click on this profile update page. So this is the page that is created. The screen is for registered user profile update page. You can see here a couple of things. And one thing that we wanted to highlight here is few line items you can see edit option, and few points are not, actually there is no edit option, which means The fields wherein edit option is not available, you will not be able to edit those fields. So for example, email ID, you will not be able to edit the email ID. And few details like state, city, area, locality, these you will not be able to edit, because whenever you want to change your address, you have to provide your PIN code. Basis the PIN code, all other details will come up automatically. So that is why you will not be able to directly edit the state, city, or area, locality. And also you can see here two icons, merge V2 ID. We will talk about this merge V2 ID in subsequent slides. And you also have this option to check your DSC, whether your DSC is valid, what is your serial number and all. You can see this. So this is the screen for profile update. Wherever you can see a update edit option, you can go ahead and update the details. And please note that you can also see the password change. If whenever you want to change your password, you have to log into the system and click on profile update, and you can change the password here by using change password functionality. This is the profile update page for business user. It is similar to registered user, but this profile update may have few fields enabled or disabled for edit, depending on the role that you have logged in with. So this screen is basically for the professional user. You can see here, email ID will not be able to edit. Mobile number, if you want to edit, you can edit. And address also, if you want to edit, you can edit. And you can see add role functionality. This functionality is basically, if you want to, initially you've registered with professional user, and if you want to change your role to a director role or any other role for that matter, you can use this add role functionality and you can change your role. But please note that whenever you're adding a role, for example, you are a professional now, which means you must have given your PAN number and the membership number details while creating your registration. Now, if you want to change your role from professional to director, add role functionality will give you some additional validations. You have to mandatorily, whatever the mandatory fields that are required for that particular role. So if it is for director role, if I want to change the role to director, then what is the minimum requirement or prerequisite for director role is the DIN number, right? You have to provide your DIN number and the details as per your DIN database. Only then your role upgrade or role change will happen to the director or designated partner role. And suppose if the screen is for director role, you may not be able to see the edit option for mobile number also or address also. Because if you are having a director or designated partner role, any changes to the mobile number or email ID or the address has to happen through either through DIR3 KYC form, or if you want to change your email ID, your address or nationality, whatever the details, apart from email and mobile number, you have to go and file DIR6. So we will not allow the user to change those details by using profile update page here, because as per Companies Act 2013, so there are predefined forms which are there to change the details of the directors. So here again, we have merge V2 ID and show DSC. Show DSC option will let you know your DSC serial number and validity of your DSC. And also the point we want to highlight here once again for director role is basically, even if you go and change your email ID or the mobile number, email ID, especially for that matter, if you change your email ID to DIR3 KYC e-form, your user ID will not get changed automatically to the changed email ID. Your email ID or the user ID will still be the user ID with which you have initially created your business user. However, all the notifications, whenever we have to send any OTP, suppose if you want to file your DIR3 KYC web form or e-form, or you want to change your password or whatever, all the OTP authentications will happen through the new email ID, which we generally call it as notification email ID. That is based on your latest email ID that is available in your DIN master, which got updated through your DIR3 KYC e-form. So with this, we have completed the profile update flow for registered user and business user. Let us quickly see forgot password and forgot user ID process flow, which we have updated recently. So earlier we had a hint question option, and there were many issues with respect to hint answers, because many hint answers were not available in V3 system, or user is not able to recollect his hint answers. So with this, we have actually streamlined this entire process of forgot password and forgot user ID. So whenever you want to retrieve your password or change your reset your password, so you have to mandatorily enter your email ID, which is nothing but your user ID. And then you have to give your date of birth. Suppose if it is a company user, you have to provide your incorporation date. So with this combination, we will go and check whether your email ID is valid email ID or not, and the date of birth is matching with the email ID that you have provided. And then we do a OTP verification, and so that you can go ahead with your password reset. So as I mentioned, you have to validate email ID and reset password. Date of birth for individuals and date of incorporation for company or LLP is validated, and email or OTP, mobile OTP is verified. Only one OTP is required, either email ID or OTP or mobile OTP. Now the screen is for forgot user ID. So forgot user ID, the process is little different for registered user and business user. If you are a registered user, you can directly provide your email ID and you can retrieve your details. So basically how it happens is, whenever you want to retrieve your user ID, and if you are a registered user, you have to click on this registered user and you have to provide your email ID or PAN number. And basis that details, we will be retrieving your details and we will be showing the user ID. And then you can go and retrieve your user ID after OTP authentication. Suppose if you are a business user, so we have different combinations of business users, right? So I may be having a user ID, which is an email ID, and I may be having a PAN number or DIN number, or PAN and DIN number, both are available. So all these combinations are available. Here, earlier we used to restrict only with the email ID and PAN number, which is due to which we are facing, like, users who used to face a lot of issues. Now we have added all these three combinations. Whenever you want to retrieve your user ID for a business user, you can either give your email ID, a PAN number, or DIN number. Basis these combinations, and also it is mandatory for you to select the role with which you have registered currently. Suppose if this user is email ID registered with the professional staff member, so I will have to choose the role, so that we will go and check in the system if this email ID is actually linked with this user ID, user role or not. And depending on this combination, we will be showing all the user IDs which are linked to this combination of email ID and user role. And all the existing user IDs will come as a drop down, and user can select the respective user ID and click on next button. So that OTP verification would happen. Here also it is only one OTP that would be required, either email OTP or mobile OTP. And once OTP is authenticated, we will also be checking the date of incorporation or date of birth of that particular user ID for which we want to retrieve the user ID. So once this gets validated, after OTP verification, we will be validating this date of birth or incorporation. Once this gets passed, we will be able to retrieve the user ID of the user, and will be shared with through email ID and mobile. So with this, we have completed forgot user ID flow. Associate DSC flow, we will quickly run through the associate DSC flow. So as we mentioned, for associating your DSC, the point number 1, only business users will be able to associate their DSC in V3 system. And then you will not be able to file any of the forms without associating DSC in the system. I mean, you will not be able to affix your signature without associating a DSC on V3 system. Please note that DSC association, if you have already associated your DSC in V2 system, do I need to associate my DSC again in V3 system? Yes, you have to do your association of DSC in both the systems. Till the time we have forms which are up and running in V2 system, you have to go and associate your DSC there. And for V3, you have to do your associate DSC in V3 system after creating your business user ID. So this is a normal flow of any associate DSC. You have to provide your token details and certificate details and password. Please make sure that whenever you are associating your DSC, you are associating only one DSC. Suppose you've done some association of DSC of some other user, and if you want to change that, you have to associate your DSC again, and then you will get a warning message saying that, so for this so-and-so user ID, there's some other DSC is already available. You want to replace the DSC, yes or no? So we will be showing that in the FAQ in subsequent slide. Please make sure to associate your own DSC. So this is a successful message that you get once your DSC is associated with the respective DIN, income tax PAN, or membership number. So we will move to FAQs and do's and don'ts, few points that we want to highlight, and the common issues and resolutions. So first question is, if I'm an existing user in V2 system, do I need to register once again? So answer is no. If you are an existing user in V2 system, then you need not register once again. In fact, the system will identify the email ID that you give as a duplicate ID. Suppose in V2 system, you have created your user ID with say abc@gmail.com, and you try to create a new user ID with the same email ID in V3 system, system will automatically restrict and will not permit to create a registration. However, suppose if user attempts to register with a new email ID, which was not associated with the old V2 system. So if abc@gmail.com is giving me an error, let me give my details and then give some other email ID. Then you may be able to create the user ID. But in that case, the problem that you may face is basically you will not be able to see the forms that you have filed in V2 system with abc@gmail.com. Right? So it is advisable not to create the new user ID. If you already have one V2 ID in V2 system, it is advisable to upgrade your profile or change your role to business user, so that because of that upgrade, so all the application history, all the forms that you have filed by using your old V2 ID will get migrated to V3 system. Please note that one email ID, one PAN, only one user can be registered on the new system. So you cannot have multiple user IDs with the same email ID or same PAN number in V3 system. So the answer is, if you already have an existing user ID in V2 system, to ensure that all your old forms, V2 forms, get migrated to V3 correctly without any issue, especially in case of pending forms. So the stakeholders will face a lot of issues if you create a new user ID and suddenly one form gets moved to V3 system, which I need to resubmit, then you may face an issue if you create a new user instead of upgrading yourself to a V3 user in V3 system. So the next question is, what information needs to be provided for registration? It is just a recap, which we have already discussed. So for email ID, mobile number, and address are mandatory for almost all the users. You have to provide these details. And then PAN. So PAN is mandatory for registered users and also the business users, except for director or designated partner role and the professional staff member. So this we've already discussed. It's for director or designated partner role. PAN is optional because DIN is anyway we are taking it. And for professional role, anyway we are taking the main professional member details. So right now the PAN is not mandatory. And for company or LLP user, so all other fields like address, your mobile number, email ID, in terms of other users, like not other than company users, you have to provide your first name, middle name, last name, date of birth, your gender. All these are common across all the roles. That is, we have not provided the complete list here. So for company or LLP user, it is SIN or LLP, FLLP or FCRN. This is the main core field that you need before creating this user role. And for director or designated partner, DIN or DPIN number. For manager, secretary, authorized representative, it is a PAN. So PAN since already covered above, so we have mentioned. So it is like any other role. Same is with the officer in default. And for professional, the professional membership number and the professional institute is a mandatory, apart from the fields that we have seen above. And then professional staff member, the professional membership number under which this person wants to get registered as a professional staff member. So the next question is, can a registered user upgrade to business user? Yes, a registered user can upgrade to a business user. One must not create a new business user. As we said in the previous slide, if you already have one registered user, no need to create a new user ID as a business user just because you are not able to file any forms in V3 without business user. So before creating any of the business user, please make sure to check if you have any existing V2 user IDs, especially where you have filed some forms or some forms which are pending for processing, which are getting moved to V3 system. So you have to make sure to upgrade the role to business user instead of creating a new user. How to do this is the steps below are the steps. So even registered user in V2. So basically when we talk about registered user, it is for both V2 and V3. If you have created V3 registered user also, you can go for upgrade to V3 May itself, you can go for V3 business user upgrade, or if you have V2 user ID, you can update yourself to V3 business user. How to do that? So it is a profile, same the screen that we have seen. Basically, you have to go for profile update, and then so maybe I will quickly show you the screen, the previous screen that we have seen. Profile update page for registered user. This is how it looks. So here, if you can see, whenever you want to upgrade yourself from registered user to business user, you have to log in with your existing credentials of registered user and then click on the edit option here under user category. Because first prerequisite to change the category from registered user to business user. The moment you change this category to business user, then you will have one more option here to add role, wherein you will get all the values of business user roles as a drop down. So this is how you will get it. So first you have to click on this profile update page and then click on edit user category and select the user category as business user. And then click on add role drop down. You will get a drop down with all the roles, whatever the role to which you want to upgrade from registered to business user, you have to choose the role. And depending on the role, system will mandate you to enter a few set of details. Like for example, if you want to upgrade to a business user role with director or designated partner, system will mandate you to enter a DIN number and all the details. Or suppose if you want to upgrade to professional user, system will ask you to enter the PAN number and the professional institute name and the membership number. So like that, you have to give all the prerequisite fields that we have seen as part of the registration flow. So I'm a CA in professional role. Can I also have a director role with the same user ID? So as per the current functionality, so in the system at a time, you can have only one role. You cannot have multiple roles under the same ID because we are going with the one email ID and one PAN concept for one user, right, in V3 system. So that is why you will not be able to have multiple roles with the same user ID. However, you can change the role. You can shift the roles by using add role functionality. So if you want to initially you created your login with the professional user role and then you want to shift the role to a director role or vice versa, you can use this add role functionality so that your role gets switched. And then so that you can go ahead and file. Suppose if you want to file a form with the director role, you want to sign a form with the director signatory role, then obviously you have to change your role as a director. And then you can go ahead and file the form or affix your DSC. So it depends on the user requirement. However, role, you will not be able to see the multiple roles at the same point in time, but you can go ahead and switch your role, switch back and switch in. So you can do that. However, as I mentioned very clearly, whenever you're doing this add role functionality, you have to make sure that all the mandatory details are validated. So system will ask you to provide the required data. If it is not available already, then we will be validating the details either with your professional institute or with PAN database or with DIN master, depending on the role that you are selecting. So the next question is, my details have changed. How do I update my profile? So profile update page we have seen. So details can be updated by visiting the profile update page, which can be accessed by clicking on the screen that we have seen already. However, not all details in the profile can be changed. Only certain details can be changed, that too depending on your role with which you have logged in. For example, username for other than company use. So basically, these are all the few examples wherein you will not be able to see edit option against that field. For example, username, which is nothing but your email ID for other than company user and LLP user, right? So you will not be able to change the username for any of the roles other than company user. For company user also, whenever any SIN change happens, so the SIN will automatically get changed and the stakeholders are expected to log in with the latest SIN number only. because there are so many scenarios through which your SIN can undergo a change. For example, you are changing your company is getting changed from private to public, or say you're changing your address from one state to another state. There are many scenarios wherein your SIN will undergo a change. So suppose initially you created your login with the SIN number, which is a private company, and later on you go for a conversion and get yourself converted into a public company, then your SIN will get changed from PTC to PLC, right? That ownership code 21-digit alphanumeric number. So it is expected that you will have to log in with the new SIN, because whenever you are filing any form with the company or LLP user, the user ID with which you have created, that will get auto-populated in the form that, whatever the form that you want to file. Suppose, for example, I want to file a DIR 12 form, and I already have a company user ID. So I've logged in with my latest SIN number. So the moment you enter your user ID as your SIN number and click on DIR 12 form, whatever the SIN number that you have provided at the time of logging in, so that same SIN number will be auto-populated in your DIR 12 form. So you're not required to enter the DIN number again. Because anyway, for company or LLP user, I will be able to file the form only for that particular company, right? So that is why we are actually trying to reduce the number of touch points. So that is why the SIN will automatically get pre-filled in the form. And also the email ID and mobile number, which we have already discussed. So for this email ID and mobile number update of a director or designated partner, so Rule 12A clearly says that you have to update these details only through DIR 3 KYC form. So hence, these details will not be available for edit in the profile update page. Also, address of a company or LLP or a director or designated partner. So we have specific set of forms which are defined as per Companies Act or as per LLP Act, right? So for example, if you want to change your address of an LLP, you have to file Form 15 LLP. Same way for company, you have to go and file INC-22. So we cannot deviate this process, which is already there in the law. So wherever there is a predefined form or the process which is defined under the Companies Act or LLP Act, you have to go and change the details only through that process. So the next question is, I have registered with director role and changed my email ID through DIR 3 KYC. Will my user ID get changed automatically? So this point we've already discussed. So for director or designated partner role, if there is an update in the email ID through DIR 3 KYC form, so your user ID would remain same. It will not get changed automatically basis the DIR 3 KYC form. Whatever the user ID with which you have initially registered, that would remain same. However, all notifications and OTPs will be sent on updated email ID as per the DIN master. So we will be picking your email ID from your DIN master only for sending your OTPs. But you have to log in with the same old user ID only. So what is merge V2 ID? So this is also the concept which we have added a couple of months back, wherein users were facing a lot of challenges with respect to user IDs, multiple user IDs creation in V2, and they were not able to merge, or system was not allowing. There were so many issues with respect to the V2 IDs. So basically in V2 system, first of all, in V3 profile update has a functionality. If you have seen the previous screens, we have one option called merge V2 ID concept, right? For both, it is available for both registered user and a business user. So whenever we click on this merge V2 ID, so this functionality gives one-time opportunity for the user to merge one of the V2 user ID with V3. So for example, I have created one V3 ID without knowing that I already have my ID in V2 system. I have some set of forms, or I thought maybe I may not be requiring those forms, or let me create a new ID in V3 system. So I've created it, and later on I've realized that there are some set of forms which are moved to V3, which were pending for processing, or I'm not able to view my application history for the forms which were filed in V2 system. Or due in V2, for certain point in time, there was no validation on uniqueness check, on unique email ID check, or unique user ID. So due to that reason, I may be having multiple user IDs with same email ID or same PAN or same DIN number. All combinations were there till certain point in time. So in those cases also, users were facing a lot of issues to move their application history to V3 system. So this is again one of the input that we received from ICSI and other two institutes. So wherein we had provided one-time merge functionality for users, wherein if you have one V2 ID and which you want to merge, that V2 ID may be registered with any whatever may be the email ID, whatever may be your username or the mobile number. We will not check whether it is the same email ID or same PAN number while doing a merge especially. But however, whatever the email ID that you want to merge, you need to know your user ID and we will be authenticating to your password, V2 password. If you are able to log in with your password and you provide your V2 ID, system will automatically merge your V2 ID with V3 system. This is mainly to handle your application history or the history of the forms which are there in V2. However, please note that this V2 merge functionality is provided only as a one-time activity to the users with only one user ID. So if you say that I have 2-3 IDs which I want to merge with one of the V3 ID, will I be able to do it? Answer is no. Only as of now, it is only one ID can be merged with the one V3 ID. Okay, so as I mentioned, for merging the user ID, you need to know your user ID and password, without which you will not be able to merge. So if I don't authenticate your user ID and password, so anybody can merge any other user ID, right? So that is the prerequisite. Now, do I need to associate my DSC every time I upgrade my profile? So we have seen in the previous slides wherein we've said you can switch your roles from professional to director or vice versa. So every time if I change my role or upgrade my role, do I need to associate my DSC every time? The answer is no. DSCs are not required to be associated again once the profile upgrade is done by the end user. Automatically your DSC will be linked. Suppose if you are initially registered as a professional user and you associate your DSC to your membership number and the PAN number, later on you are upgrading yourself to a director or designated partner role. However, the DSC will all automatically update it to your new role. So there is no need to associate your DSC every time you upgrade your role or you are switching your roles. However, while affixing your DSC, so please make sure that whenever you're affixing your DSC in any form, ensure to log in with the relevant role as the DSC association checks are done based on. So if your current role is professional and you are trying to sign with the director role by affixing a DSC under a direct signatory section in any of the form, the role check may fail. So you have to make sure that your role is exactly matching with your form wherein you are affixing your DSC, whether you are affixing your DSC under the capacity of a signatory of a company or you are affixing as a practicing professional. Depending on that, you make sure that you logged in with that user so that DSC association checks would not fail. What if a user has registered a wrong DSC with his user ID? So this is also one of the common issue that we see. I have one user ID and I've associated I associated one DSC which may not be valid, or by mistake I've associated someone else's DSC. What I should do? So users are required to associate the DSC of a correct person with correct. First of all, this should not happen. So please make sure that you go and associate your own DSC. Don't associate any incorrect DSC or any other person's DSC in the system. Because if you do this, other person, the actual person may face issues. So if you have, suppose if you have done this, if you've already done this kind of a update in the system and you've realized that you want to change this, then how do I go and correct this? It is a simple process. You have to, so if you have if you have registered a wrong DSC, you have to associate with DSC again, but only the thing that you will get extra is basically we will be throwing one warning message to you saying that this DSC is already registered with your account is already registered so on so DSC, so you want to proceed yes or no. So if I say yes, then the new DSC will get associated. And also, as I mentioned, it is one user, one PAN, one email ID, right? Same way, one user ID, one DSC. So you will not be able to associate multiple DSCs with the same user ID. So few do's and don'ts, which we want to highlight. So please make sure to update your mobile number on V3 profile update page. We have, as I mentioned, most of the users in V2 system are registered users, wherein you may not be having your mobile number updated already because it was not mandatory till certain point in time in V2 system, right? So, but however, for V3, all the validations or registrations are OTP driven. So it is mandatory. It is advisable for all the users, whoever is coming from, especially from V2 to V3, by doing a registered user upgrade to a business user upgrade, please make sure to update your mobile number in the V3 profile update page so that you will be able to receive your OTPs and all the relevant notifications. And next point that we need to make sure is review of profile update page details and the save details after logging in with existing V2 ID and password. So you have to make, whenever you're coming for the first time in the system of V3 and you have a V2 ID, you have to log in with that V2 ID and password, and then you have to, it is mandatory for you to, because initially you're in V2 system, your user ID is the ID that you're given, right, as your user ID. But now somehow I have to change your user ID to as your email ID, right, as part of the V3 processing. If I have to do that, the user has to mandatorily has to log in with V2 ID, and they have to, even if there is no change required on the profile update page, you still have to click on the save button, so that on click of that save, we will replace your user ID, whatever was there in V2, with the email ID, the profile update page. So with this step, your user ID will automatically be converted as your email ID in V3 system, and you will become a V3 user ID, V3 user. And also, one of the common issue that we see is basically registered with name, date of birth, address details. So every time we get an issue saying that your personal details mismatch. So please make sure to provide your first name, middle name, last name, and date of birth as per your PAN database, wherever you're providing your PAN number, as per your DIN master, wherever you're providing your DIN number. So especially for director role, we are facing this lot of issues with respect to first name, middle name, last name. This is again, I will tell you the reason also. So till 2020, so this PAN verification flow that was there in MCA system used to authenticate the name, the first name, middle name, last name in any sequence. Suppose, for example, my name is Vijaya Gumpena. Vijaya is my first name, last name is Gumpena, for example. So, and this PAN verification, if I've done my PAN verification, or I got my DIN allotted in 2020 or prior to 2020, or I've done my KYC form prior to 2020, where the previous PAN verification process was there, then in that case, if I give my first name as Gumpena and last name as Vijaya, it used to pass the validation. It used to check only the combination in any sequence. So which means even though my PAN database my first name is Vijaya and last name is Gumpena, but my DIN master might have got updated as vice versa, Gumpena Vijaya. So now if you try to create your director role by putting first name as Vijaya and last name as Gumpena, it will not accept, because it will go and check your DIN master, right? So that is why it is very important to note that whenever you're providing your name, date of birth, and address details, please check if you're providing your PAN number or not on the screen. If you're providing, make sure to provide your details as per PAN. If you're providing your DIN number, make sure to provide your details as per your DIN database. So after 2020, you may not be able to face this issue, because after 2020, PAN verification is basically for each field. You have to, we are matching first name with first name and last name middle name with middle name only. So we will not face this problem, but this problem may be there for old users. So the next point that we need to ensure is log into V2 system with existing V2 user credential to access SRNs or forms that are still in V2. So as we've seen in the screen, right? So if you want to see the forms, suppose for example, annual filing forms are still up and running in V2 system. And if you want to see those forms or see the history of the SRNs or what the workplace page of V2, you still have to log in with your V2 ID to access all the forms that you filed in V3 system or you're going to file in V2 system. And the next point to be noted is add manager or secretary authorized representative role with SIN details to file forms of a specific company. So manager, secretary, authorized representative point we've discussed, right? So there are 2-3 scenarios that we discussed. For the first time, at the time of incorporation, you can create your role. For subsequent, so basically, whenever you want to file any form, with the role of manager, secretary, authorized representative, whenever you're creating your role, initial registration flow, or after creation, whenever you want to file any form for a company, then you have to go and associate that company by using this profile update page. So without which, suppose you have company has authorized to become a manager, secretary, or authorized representative. While creating that authorization or while upgrading yourself as a user, manager, secretary, authorized representative, SIN is not mandatory because we have to handle those incorporation flow also through this role only. So that is why we have not mandated SIN as a mandatory input. But however, if you want to file any forms after incorporation for a specific company with this role, you have to associate your SIN number. Otherwise, you will not be able to file the form. And for degradation or deactivation of V2 user IDs, share self-assisted declaration and user authentication details. So even though we have provided V2 merge ID flow for the users, wherein most of the issues are getting resolved or might have already got resolved, but we may still have few more issues like multiple user IDs, or the user is not even aware his user ID, or whatever may be the reasons. If merge V2 ID, say if they're not able to do this activity, they have to raise a ticket for degradation. Degradation, we mean to say that we will be degrading the user to registered user by delinking your PAN number, DIN number, and PAN membership number, so that you will be able to upgrade your role. And one more important point, we have seen a professional staff member screen, right, wherein we said PAN is not mandatory. Even though it is not mandatory for now, please make sure to enter the PAN for a professional staff member role also, so that your details would get validated with that PAN. Because what we have seen is professional staff members are creating, suppose let us say I'm a professional staff member, I have two different email IDs. So I thought, let me create two IDs. So one without PAN, one with PAN, because I have two email IDs, so that I can work simultaneously, or I can fill simultaneous filings, forms. So what I've created, system has allowed, because PAN is not mandatory. So one user ID I've created without PAN, one user ID I've created with the PAN. So what happens is tomorrow, so initially I'm a trainee, I've become a company secretary, or for example. So now I want to convert myself to a professional user, or for any other role for that matter. So that time, so you have two user IDs, right? So system will not be able to first of all, it will not allow you to, suppose if you want to move the first user ID where PAN is not linked to, right? So that user ID, so you will not be able to do it because you have another PAN number. Now, if you try to create another user ID, it will not allow you. So it is basically a complete blocker for the user. So just to make sure, whenever you're creating any professional staff member role, make sure to enter the PAN number, even it is not asking you to provide this mandatorily, because we have seen such cases where users are facing lots of issues, especially whenever they want to upgrade their role to any of the user director role or professional role, whatever may be the role. They are facing a lot of issues in terms of this PAN mismatch or the personal details mismatch, all these kind of issues. So then please refer FAQs and help documents that are available on the system, and please reach out to us by raising the ticket with help desk for all with all the supporting documents. Especially whenever you want to deactivate or degrade, you have to provide the required documents for us to validate before doing this activity. So do not merge the same V2 ID which has already been upgraded to V3 system. So if you've already upgraded your V2 ID to V3 as a registered user or whatever may be the user role, do not merge the same V2 ID with V3, so it will not work. Because this is one-time activity that we have provided. That too, one V2 ID, you can merge it with V3. The ID which has already been upgraded to V3, you will not be able to do it. And do not skip reviewing and updating all the user details in V3 profile update page, which we have already discussed. This will make sure that you will have the latest information on your profile update page or your profile. Do not file any forms before saving profile details and user role on V3. So this is one of the important points that we wanted to highlight. If you want to file any form in V3, please make sure to upgrade your role to V3 user, that is change your user ID of V2 to V3 ID, which is nothing but your email ID. What we have seen is users are trying to log in with V2 ID, which will obviously allow in the system in V3 screen. But however, they're trying to file the form directly without clicking on profile save button or upgrading their role to a V3 ID. So what is actually happening in that case? Form filing is happening, but the ID that is getting stamped is basically the V2 ID, and users are not able to resubmit the forms because of that reason. Because for V3, it is basically the email ID is my user ID, right? So that is the reason why. Please make sure to, even if your details are same, you want to register, you already have a user ID in V2 system, all the details are same, you still have to, whenever you're doing a first time login in V3, you still have to log in, click on your save button on the profile update page so that your user ID will become your email ID. Do not enter mobile number without country code. So please make sure to provide your country code. This is very important for sending OTPs. And do not attempt to create multiple users with same PAN, email ID, and phone number. So the way professional users, staff members are getting, just because we have not mandated PAN as mandatory field. So in future, even now, if you are able to create multiple user IDs, but in future you may face this kind of problem, especially in terms of moving your application history or merging user IDs. So do not access website on multiple browser tabs. So via unsecured or networks, these are common issues, and do not share your OTPs or passwords with any unauthorized user. These are all the few do's and don'ts that we wanted to highlight with you all. Next, these are all the few points, issues that we have seen based on the tickets that are raised by the users. Unable to update profile due to personal details mismatch. This I explained you already. So please make sure to provide the details, applicant details as per DIN in case of director role, and for wherever you are entering a PAN, make sure to provide the details as per the PAN database. The next frequent question ticket that we have seen is unable to update the profile due to the error. An account already exists with the entered email, PAN, DIN, membership number. So user is not able to update the profile, saying that already another account is already there. So here you have two options. Either you use that functionality of V2 merge ID. After 24 hours, your ID will get merged and all application history will get moved to your new ID. Or you may have one problem for, as we've mentioned, for merging V2 ID, you need to have your user ID and password, right? However, as we discussed in the initial slide, in V2 system for business user, login is basically a DSC based login, which means if I have one business user in V2 system, which I want to merge it with V3 ID, even though we are giving this option of V2 merge ID option to the business users also of V2, however, they will not be able to do it because I do not have my password, because in V2 it is password option is not there. It is basically a DSC based login, right? Which means if I have one V2 business user ID, which I want to merge it with V2 ID, it may not happen directly because I do not have my password. So what do I do in those cases? You have to raise a ticket with a self-declaration and KYC documents so that we will degrade your role to a registered user role. So degrade means basically we will delink your DIN PAN membership number so that you will be able to reset your password in V2 system, and then you can go for user ID merge. It is little long process, but because of the two systems and had a different approach in terms of the login in V2 and V3, we have to do this. There is no other option as of now. So whenever V2 business user wants to merge their ID to V3 ID, they have to raise a ticket and degrade themselves to a registered user and then reset their password in V2 and then go for merge your ID. Next is unable to update profile to manager, secretary, authorized representative as a current role as a professional. So there are few roles for which you will not be able to shift the role. For example, you will not be able to shift the role from professional to manager, secretary, authorized representative, because manager, secretary, authorized representative role is for a specific company, right? But whereas professional can go ahead and file the form for any company or LLP. So in those cases, you will not be able to update the role, because the moment if I allow the upgrade of the role or a switch role for from professional to this role, all the forms which are filed by this professional for whatever the companies or LLPs will start appearing as if these are pertaining to this company with which this role is associated. So because of that reasons, we are not giving add role option for all of the users. So you have to make sure that wherever it is not available, you have to raise a ticket with all the self-declaration and KYC documentation, so that we will be degrading the role and then we will be converting your role to registered user. So then you can go ahead with the whatever the options that you have, either merge role or upgrade role, profile update. So all these options you can use and you can update your role. Unable to update profile of any role if the current role is a professional staff member. So actually this role change is actually happening. So if you want to become a professional, currently your role is professional staff member and you want to change this role to a manager secretary role or a professional role, by using add role you can do it. However, if the stakeholder is facing any issue, so there may be a lot of issues, maybe PAN details are not matching, or the email ID may be a duplicate, or a PAN you might have already created another user ID, the example that we have seen, right? There may be a lot of issues why add role functionality is not working. So especially if you already have one role in the system without PAN or with same email ID or whatever may be the reasons. So ideally it should work. If you're facing any further challenges, you can raise a ticket with all the error screenshots and the required documentation so that our team will look into the issue. So other common issues, unable to merge V2 ID with V3 user ID due to incorrect password. So as we mentioned, for merging the V2 ID with V3 ID, the prerequisite to know your V2 password. Suppose if you don't know your V2 password, you have to go to V2 login page and reset your password and then go for merging. So otherwise you will not be able to merge. For merging, use V2 ID. It is mandatory to have your user ID and V2 password. V2 user ID is not being generated after the creation of V3 user ID. So as we all know, whenever new user registration is happening in V3 system, so we are creating a parallel V2 ID and we are sending that V2 ID to the stakeholders, because if I have to file any V2 forms in the system without V2 ID, I will not be able to do that, right? So that is why it is, and V2 registration in V2 is completely blocked. So that is the reason why we are, whenever new registration happens, whether it is a registered user or business user, we are creating a parallel V2 ID and we are sharing the details of the user ID through email for the respective stakeholder. So, but however, this happens in the form of batch. So you have to wait for 24 hours. And so that you can go ahead and file V2 IDs by using that ID which got created basis the V3 registration. Unable to create a user ID due to an account is already exist with the entered email ID or PAN number or DIN number. So this issue will come up whenever you already have another account with this combination. So then in that case, you can go for forgot user ID functionality that we have provided, right? So you can either provide your email ID, PAN number, or DIN number, and you can retrieve and you can see what all IDs that I have, so that you can go for forgot password, or you can retrieve your user IDs. If the password is expired for any user ID, the user is unable to reset the password due to something went wrong error. So in those cases, please create a ticket with us. So we will provide a default password on the registered email ID. So 2-3 points for DSC association issues, which we have already discussed. User is trying to associate DSC with the role as a registered user after proceeding with. So as we mentioned, for associating your DSC, you need to have a business user role. So with the registered user role, even if you will be able to associate, or that icon if you are able to see, but that will not, you will not be able to associate affix your DSC with the DSC which is associated with the registered role. So please make sure to associate your DSC only with the business user role. Unable to associate DSC due to the dropdown is not working. So make sure to download the latest required softwares from the MCA portal and try to reassociate the DSC. And this is one of the common DSC is not registered issue that we keep getting. So please make sure that user ID created in V3, make sure to create the user ID first in V3, because it will, if you have V2 ID, that will not, and if you try to affix the DSC and submit a form in V3 without associating your DSC in V3 system, it will not work. So DSC association is a parallel activity. If you have to file your form in V2, you have to associate your DSC in V2. And if you want to affix your DSC in V3, you have to associate your DSC in V3, for which you need to have a business user role. So please follow all the steps. And also, please make sure to select the appropriate role while affixing your DSC in the e-forms. If your current role is professional, try to affix the DSC in the professional, practicing professional section. Or if you want to sign with the practicing professional capacity, make sure that your role is professional user role and your membership number details are updated in the profile. So these are all the few common issues we thought like we have to highlight, because most of the questions that we've got think almost all the questions, whatever we have received of 30 questions, most of these issues are common issues which we try to highlight. So now I think this is from our end, ma'am. So now we can open for questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful PPT. I must say that most of the question, in fact, 90% of the questions are of the topics that we have discussed in the PPT today. And even during the live webinar, we have received around 200 queries related to these issues that you have discussed in this PPT. So I think most of the queries have already been resolved of the stakeholders, and some of the questions that specifically they have raised majorly related to login registration and others as well. Can I take those queries now?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of the question is, sometime after uploading the form, when we make payment, the form gets shifted in cancelled tab instead of approved or pending for action. In such situation, the payment status is success, but the status of form is cancelled. What to do in such situation?
So, ma'am, actually, this is again relating to payment. So maybe there is a 4-hour window for getting a payment confirmation from NTRP. So in those cases, maybe user has to raise a ticket. So ideally, so it should not get cancelled. But if the form is already cancelled and has been moved to cancel, but your payment status is success, user has to raise a ticket so that we can check and retrieve the status back to pending for processing or under processing. So, ma'am, one request from our side is, can we first check the question and answer questions for user registration and DSC so that
Sure.
Seema, we have Seema also with us, so maybe
one of the question is they're unable to update their user role as nodal officer, and the portal is also preventing updation of their user role as nodal officer, with system generating response stating user account already exists with the same email ID.
Yeah, Seema.
Yes. We have been seeing this with the nodal officer record. So, ma'am, whenever the stakeholder is trying to register themselves as a nodal officer, first and foremost, the person should be associated as a nodal officer or a deputy nodal officer in IPFA system, that is through IPF2 form, right, ma'am? First and foremost, that is the most important requirement. Second point you are raising is that since they, what has happened is that professionals has get themselves registered as a the professionals who are employees have get themselves registered in the professional role. So they want to add a role through the nodal officer. They are not allowed to do that, but because in our system, when we say professional, we mean the practicing professionals, not the professionals who are in the employment. So whenever they had to get themselves registered, so they should have got themselves registered in the category of manager, secretary, or authorized representative. So one issue is there. Second issue is that if you want to register yourself as a nodal officer, then you have to get yourself degraded from your professional role or whatever role you are there into the MCA system. As Vijay has explained it, through one PAN, only one user login can be created, right? So that is why the stakeholders are facing this issue. But see, since we have seen the commonality of this issue, we are coming up with the functionality which will allow you to switch over from the professional to the nodal officer role. So they do not have to get themselves registered again or degrade themselves, or because this is what we have seen that IPF users are facing these issues. So once they are registered as a professional, then they have to get themselves degraded for the nodal officer. Then if they want to again work as a professional, then they have to again degrade themselves. So that is an issue which we are seeing. So as an additional functionality, we will be providing for the nodal officer the switch role functionality, and in that case they'll be able to use they'll be getting the notifications on the email IDs which has been provided by them in IPF2 form. So that is an additional thing which we are working on to, and we'll be coming up with that.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. So in that case, ma'am, one of the question which is related to your response is that one person means a company secretary in employment, then how he needs to get registered into that V3 portal. So we've already answered that in the form of manager secretary capacity, he can register on the V3 portal, right?
Right. That is what it is.
Yes. Ma'am, another question is, as an intern, I've created a login ID for a PCS form as it was required at that moment. Now that intern is being a company secretary and joined a new company and unable to create an account with his CS membership, as it shows that already PAN exists. Any solution to this?
Ma'am, as my friend Vijay has already communicated that that user role can add a role of the professional category, but in this particular scenario, if the stakeholder is the user is facing issue, we would request them to raise a ticket on FO portal, and we'll have a look into it. Or either you can also share with us, and we'll see that what is the issue which is being faced by them.
Yeah. Ma'am, another question is, when a CS, also an IPF nodal officer, resigns from the company, what will be the status of pending form in his or her nodal officer login? Is
So
there any option to shift the pending forms to the new nodal officer login?
yes, ma'am. Actually, this is also one of the additional factor which we are going to come over. So, as in, can I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
So as in when the new nodal officer will be appointed into that particular company, and for which the company has filed IPF2 form, then in that case, whatever the application, the forms which are there in the application history of the previous nodal officer will get shifted to the new nodal officer who's going to get appointed. So that is the functionality which we are coming up with, and will be that'll be coming very soon into the system.
Okay, so that will be an automatic transmission
Automated transition, right?
from resigned nodal officer to the new nodal officer.
Yes, that is going to happen, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, another question is that they've created a V3 ID for the company, but they are unable to create ID for V2. Is this in this case, how they will be able to access the V2 portal in case they want?
Sorry, come again.
They have already created the V3 ID, the registered ID on the V3 portal
Right.
for the company, but they are unable to create their company ID on the V2 portal.
I think whenever you're creating a V3 ID, then you will be getting a mail from the system generated mail, which will tell you the credentials and the password for your V2 ID. So through which you need not have to create another one. You can use that user ID and login password that can be utilized for accessing the forms which are available on the V2 portal.
Okay. In case the user is not able to retrieve those user ID and password for the V2, they can raise the ticket for the same.
Yeah,
Right?
or you can share that concern with us also. We'll have a look into it.
Sure. Thank you. Ma'am, another query is, I think this already been answered, but I would like to take this query that they are unable to add the role as director in V3 business user ID. So they need an advice how to add the role as director in V3 portal.
So,
But
ma'am,
what is
yes,
sorry.
go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
So ma'am, so it depends. So basically, first of all, we need to understand what from which role user wants to add. So basically, what is his current role, and we have to see what is the exact error that user is getting. User may be getting a personal details mismatch if he's trying to give her details of details as per PAN database instead of DIN master. He may get an issue. So we have to see what is the issue and the error screenshot, ma'am.
So request
you
you to raise a ticket for that, or you can share the details, but the correct details should be provided so that we can analyze that issue and can provide the specific reply.
Sure. Ma'am, although we have taken all of the questions, one of the question is, what will happen if my email ID as professional user is changed due to acquisition by other company and email domain is changed?
Currently, ma'am, they have to raise the ticket for us to get that deactivated. Currently, we do not have a functionality in the system as of now to do it on the front end. It has to be taken care at the back end only. So the best option available is to raise a ticket for the same, and then we'll have a look into it.
Okay. Ma'am, one of the last question that I would like to have is how to fetch the data of staff user to principal user of practicing professional employee have left the job, how do we deal with that issue?
So you are saying that the professional staff member details which are there in his login ID, right, ma'am?
Right.
But ma'am, that is already a part and parcel of the user, the professional, whosoever is so if a staff member is associated against a particular professional, then all the details, all the forms which has been filed by that particular staff member is available on the dashboard of the professional member only. So he can retrieve it from there, maybe through the SRNs or through date or somewhere he can dig out those details. But otherwise, whatever is filings which has been done by the professional staff member, that is a part and parcel of the professional member. And it is available on his dashboard, application dashboard.
Okay, ma'am. So now, ma'am, I think we have done with the questions, and now I would like to call CS Rajesh Tarpara sir to conclude the session for today's webinar.
Thank you, madam, and thank you, LTI, MCA. As a ICSI and as a council member, and also as a practicing professionals, and also members of ICSI elected body, I must say one few feedback regarding this webinar, madam. First of all, it is a big achievement that today, right now, almost 11,000, more than 11,000 stakeholders from our CS members are attending this webinar. So effect of today's webinar is very large. And looking to the strength and looking to the questions and answer, and few answer may be unanswered, like system does not provide functionality, that can be, in my terms, it is unanswered. So we should try upon to solve these kind of the nitty-gritties in the system to ensure that in future these kind of the question never come. And yes, we should continue these kind of the interaction, because reaching to 11,000 members of ICSI in one go is very quite commendable job. I am not sure whether all are satisfied or not, but if 20% our listener is satisfied, then it is very big achievement for all of us, and we should take it positively. And I hope from the ICSI side we are ready to host many event like this, either physical mode or in webinar mode. We are ready always. We will provide all the supports to MCA and LTI, and reciprocally I also expect same kind of the supports and technical expertise from your side, and practical solutions of all the programs. So many problems which I am also facing, but most of the problems I think covered. I request further to conclude the program. Thank you all the team involved in the programs. Thank you ICSI. Thank you to my president and council. Thank you MCA secretary madam and LTI team. Thank you, and thank you members for interacting with this and participating in large number.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
so
Thank you, everyone.
officially we are concluding, and hopefully we waiting for your next request for this kind of the webinar. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.